Hello, West Michigan. You are watching Alive and Well. I'm Lynda Balkema, and today we are at the First Lutheran Church on Whitehall Road, and with me is my special guest, Dawn Shank, and we are going to talk about a benefit that is coming up on behalf of her son, Matthew Shank, and we have a lot to talk about. More so even than the benefit is what is going on in little Matthew's life and how maybe his story can help someone you know. So Matthew has a disease called ITP, correct?
Yes, idiopathic thrombocytopenia.
She actually says that well. I cannot say that. Yeah. I do know that I looked today, and idiopathic, when we hear that word, it means of an unknown cause. So it's of an unknown cause. And you have been through a great deal with this since Matthew was, when was Matthew diagnosed with this?
January 26th of this year. Matthew was, unfortunately, he got a lot of bruising throughout his body. It looked almost like a pickling a Petechiae. We got a little nervous, and we were able to go in and see his physician, and she was able to then tell us we needed to head to DeVos Hospital and have him be seen. Okay,
we need to talk about that a little bit. Petechiae, I didn't even know, and I'm in the health field a bit. And Petechiae, exactly, that is, tell us how that works or what you see on the skin with Petechiae.
The Petechiae we thought was just a rash. The physician had gave him a medication. We thought that he ended up having an allergic reaction to it. Unfortunately, we found out that Petechiae is where the blood comes to the surface of the skin and it can't clot, so it splats. And it looks like a rash.
Okay, it looks like a rash. And so you said he had a lot of bruising. Now kids do bruise a lot. My granddaughter, her legs are always black and blue. They're always running into things. But did he have bruising in other areas beyond the legs? Was it on the torso or any other indication?
Actually, to be honest with you, he almost looked like we had beaten him. He just had bruises everywhere, on his calves, on his back, where the seat belt rested against him, the pants, where he unfortunately would button up his pants, they would rub, and he'd immediately get a bruise from it. So unfortunately, we had no idea what was going on.
Right, but what you told me, we talked yesterday a bit about this, and what you told me is, fortunately, you had a good rapport with your pediatrician, because it's a scary thing. You're taking your child in who's all bruised, and the first thing you think the pediatrician is going to think is, let's call Child Protective Services. This child's been beaten or something's wrong. But your pediatrician knew what a wonderful mother you are, wonderful parents. It's a great family here.
Well, and we had conversation. I actually had conversations with her after the fact. That was one of my biggest concerns, is that I'm bringing a child in, and if she didn't know me, what she may have thought.
Sure.
And I was really impressed with the fact that she was able to say, that's what we're trained to do. And they did blood work right away, so they were able to then know that there was something chemically wrong or something that was going on with him, to show that there was something else other than he was being hurt. So I was just grateful for the fact that, yes, I did have a report, but I was still very scared. My husband and I had conversations on the fact that we had no idea what was going on and what people could have thought. And that's scary.
And Matthew is how old?
7.
He is 7 years old.
He is 7.
And is he in 2nd grade at school?
Yep, he'll be starting 3rd grade this year. Unfortunately, he missed quite a bit of school from January to February, or January to June, excuse me. So I'm just grateful for all of the support that we've had, because he's just been just a sick little guy.
A sick little guy. So let's talk a little bit more about now, once the diagnosis, and how did had he been sick prior to the bruising, or was there anything that?
Matthew unfortunately gets headaches a lot.
Okay.
So we had brought him in because he had this horrible headache, and he had this Petechiae and this bruising, and we weren't really sure what was going on. So really, no, we had no symptoms of that he was sick or that we just, he had headaches. So we brought him in, and she looked him over, and she gave him a medication, and then did lab works just to see what was going on with him. The labs came back, and he was at his platelets were at 3,000. Typically, a person should be between 150,000 and 500,000. So he was extremely low.
Extremely. Now, you explained to me you've had to learn At the baptism by fire here, you've had to learn all of this. You were explaining to me yesterday about the platelets, which is one of our 3 factors in our blood that's important. But you were saying the good cells are eating the bad cells, or the bad cells are eating the good cells. How does that work exactly? Explain that to me about.
Because it's idiopathic, they really have no idea where ITP comes from, why it happens, why the body does this. For what they do believe, something attacked his body. He had a virus that came into his body. It attached to the platelets, and the body was doing its perfect job. His body is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It started to eat the platelets. Okay. Well, then by it eating the platelets, it just didn't stop eating the platelets. It kept destroying the platelets, and now we just can't seem to switch the body back to not eat the platelets any longer.
Okay. And so a couple of the things that they're doing for treatment with Matthew, one is chemotherapy, correct?
They've done several treatments. They have done an IVIG. Unfortunately, Matthew had a horrible reaction to the IVIG, and he was not able to continue with that any longer. It's a conglomerate.
The gamma globulin?
Yep, that's exactly what that is. That's an IV treatment. They did that. It's about a 4-hour treatment. We went to DeVos. We had it done every time he would fall below a certain level, 20,000 platelets. So they did that twice. After the second time, we ended up in the ER, and they had to help Matthew come out of a horrible reaction. Okay. So we weren't able to do that any longer. The second form of medication he wasn't able to take because he's O negative and his blood conflicted with it. They started him on a steroid, and he was doing well for a little while. About every 10 days he would drop back off, and then they would start the steroid again. Well, that didn't last very long. They figured Matthew was just a typical ITP patient, and he would be out of this within 6 months. Right. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So they started chemo on him, and that wasn't working either.
No.
So they're now on a new medication. It's called MMF, excuse me. And that medication is what they give to patients who have bone marrow transplants or liver transplants. It's so that the body will not reject the organ anymore. Their hope is that the body will not reject the platelets anymore. So Matthew started that 3 weeks ago. And with starting that, he unfortunately has dropped a few times, but he's staying consistently between the 35 and 40,000 range. So we're hopeful. We have blood work twice a week. He gets his platelets counts twice a week, and then we are back and forth to DeVos every other week right now.
Okay.
So.
Okay, so, and one of the things that has been a tremendous support, Dawn is the secretary here at First Lutheran Church, and we're going to talk to the pastor a little bit later. They've really helped you tremendously. And this upcoming fundraiser, now you did tell me yesterday you've been fortunate that you've had some help from the Crippled Children's Fund. A lot of medical expenses occur with something like this because in addition to, your husband does work and you do have some insurance, but there's a lot of co-pays, there's a lot of extra expenses for specialties and the running back and forth to DeVos, and sometimes you find out late in the day and you have to spend the night over there, and you have other children at home. So this is benefit will be Sunday, August 19th. So we want to encourage folks, please come out to that and tell me a little bit about what the church is going to do here for this benefit.
We are really blessed. We are members here at the congregation at First Lutheran. This congregation, we would not have been able to go through what we've been through without the support and the love. Mm-hmm. His pediatrician, Kim Fembert, she's actually, with a couple other ladies, have been able to put on this benefit. They'll have a spaghetti dinner, silent auction, 50-50. They're going to have inflatables. They're really trying to do a carnival theme.
Max and Ruth Bloomquist, that's a draw.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
they're amazing. So it'll be right after church, and feel free, come to our service, 9:30, and then the benefit will follow right after. We are very blessed. We really are.
And I'm so glad. There's a lot of things that your church family has come together to help you with this, and I'm so glad. And I want to talk a little bit about your family here. This is your wonderful husband. Tell me about your family, your other children.
My husband Stanley. We've been together virtually 17 years. We have a 15-year-old, Alicia. She is a sophomore at Reese Puffer High School. Our Stanley, he is 11, and he is going into the 6th grade. And then our Matthew, who is 7.
Matthew.
Yeah.
Well, Matthew there. Now, Matthew has went through a little bit of transformation because he is on steroids right now.
Yeah.
And you've told me just in the last week he's put on 8 pounds. Steroids will do that. Makes him hungry all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
The poor little guy. And that's really what I think is the hardest thing, is to see this emotional little being. You know, he doesn't want to ride his bike anymore because he's afraid that he might fall, because he understands. We have not kept any of this from him. He knows exactly what is happening. A couple weeks ago he asked that he no longer be a part of the treatment plan. He wants us just to make the decisions and do what we need to do. So we have agreed to that. He does want to know his counts, so we do tell him his platelet count, so he understands when he falls, or, you know, if he's at a good range. Unfortunately, Matthew hasn't been in a good range in a long time.
You told me about, okay, what is the normal range again?
It's 150,000 to 500,000.
And that's like per microliter of blood for people that understand that. But
Yeah.
And his are falling.
His counts yesterday were 42.
42.
Yeah. He likes to dip into the single-digit range. He likes to be down
Oh,
around
gosh.
3, 4, 17. He likes to, unfortunately, that little body. But at those ranges, those platelets are working overtime. And he, just to look at him, looks like a normal little guy. He gets really tired, and he, you know, gets very lethargic. But
Yeah.
he's just a normal little guy when you look at him. But his platelets are just off
And
the road.
and you had talked to Matthew about joining us today on TV, and he decided, you know, he's not feeling real great right now, but he will be here at the benefit, and maybe we'll be able to come back and see Matthew at the benefit, and all of the activity going on around him, and hopefully he'll be doing a little better by then.
Yeah.
But you know, that was his choice, and and he has been very involved. And you told me another interesting thing is that Matthew sleeps at the foot of your bed at night, correct?
One of the things that happens is when you're on chemo, and many of you may have been on chemo, I did not know this, but your pulse ox tends to drop down. You tend not to be able to breathe as well, or it becomes very shallow. With all of the medications, Matthew takes 11 meds a day. I can't hear him when he breathes.
Yeah.
So it's become one of my favorite stories I like to tell people. He does sleep at the end of our bed a lot, just so that I can kind of keep tabs on him and make sure he's all right. And I was folding laundry a couple weeks ago, and him and I were chatting about just stuff in general. And I told him, I said, you know, buddy, I said, if you ask God to take this from you, I said, He will. If you believe, you will receive whatever you ask for in prayer. I said, the gospel tells you that. And he goes, I know, Mama. God's not ready to take this from me. And I said, buddy, do you talk to God? And he goes, no, God talks to me. And I said, you know, buddy, when God's ready to take this, will you please tell Mama? And he goes, I will, Mommy. He just has so much to teach us.
He does. And then you said what he said was that he isn't worried about.
Yeah, it was really pretty amazing. He had gone into the hospital in January, and we have to go. We went up to the floor to see where he would get his treatments, and that's where all the chemo patients are. Oncology and hematology are all in one. A lot of those physicians go hand in hand because the blood and the chemo is very closely connected.
Sure.
So we go up to the floor to see where he'll receive his conglomerate, and he'll receive treatment and see the doctors and what have you, and they call it the clinic on that floor.
Sure.
And we had gone up there, and we had come back down, and him and I were laying in the bed, and my husband had to go back and take care of the other kids, and Matt and I were just kind of talking, and we're both kind of crying. And I said, buddy, I said, you know, you have so many people love you. I said, you know, Pastor Bill loves you, and, you know, this church loves you, and, you know, Mommy and Daddy love you too. And he goes, I know, Mommy. And I said, you know, God loves you. And he goes, I know, Mommy. I'm not afraid to be with God. I'm afraid for you and Daddy.
And that just, you know, what do you say to a young man? You know, that's, you know, he does these he has all the strength and all these things to teach us. So what an amazing little guy. And of course, we're all going to be praying for a miracle that like many of these cases, they do turn around. I was reading today, there's 2 different types of this blood disease. There's an acute and there's a chronic. And Matthew, unfortunately, has I guess it would be the chronic that extends. Is that what he?
You know, our hope, honestly, our hope is that within 3 years that this will start to change and it'll go away. There are many cases where, as adults, you live with this. And Matthew might just be the person who has to deal with this, and that just means he has to have blood work, you know, to make sure his platelets are okay, and he won't be able to be in contact sports, and we just have to make sure we monitor things and we choose other lifestyles for him. You know, you don't ever want to think your child can't ride a bike or he can't play football,
right? Or,
you know, he's only going to be in 3rd grade.
Yeah.
So our life has now changed on what we hoped for. And it was really funny because he was in the ER when he got sick one of the times, and my husband was talking to Matthew, and he's like, you know, buddy, you can be anything that you want to be, and I don't want you to get discouraged by this. And he goes, Dad, I think I'm going to be a doctor, and I'm going to make sure no other little kid has this. Wow. And I believe that. And you know, he may not be a doctor, but maybe someone will see this, or maybe somebody will go to the doctor, or maybe someone will have their child be seen by somebody, and maybe Matthew will make a difference because that's the kind of kid he is.
That's wonderful. We're going to take a break. Please stay with us. We have a lot more to talk about on this subject. Thank you.